Hello, Contrarian Dude here, and trying to sneak in a quick video while my son is asleep. But something really interesting happened last night. There was a Muslim woman got kicked out of a Trump rally, and this is really interesting. There's an increasing sophistication in the protests that are happening at Trump rallies, and it's now switched to where the good guys are the protesters and the bad guys are in the audience. Just so we all know what we're talking about, let me do a quick share of a video here so you can see exactly what went on last night.
Situation here in Rock Hill, South Carolina tonight. A 56-year-old flight attendant who is a Muslim who lives in Charlotte. We spoke to her before the rally. She stood up during the rally when Donald Trump was talking about Syrian refugees. She was not saying anything. It was a moment of relative silence. And then suddenly some people in the crowd around her sort of turned on her, and some police came forward her, as you can probably see this video here, and escorted her out. And my colleague Jeremy Diamond spoke to her afterward, and she said that she was very surprised by this. She said she came to this rally with the idea of allowing Trump supporters to see what a Muslim looks like. Of course, there's been so much inflammatory rhetoric in the last several weeks since Donald Trump has called for a ban on travel for Muslims coming into the U.S. So she said she came to this rally in not far from Charlotte, just to see it, and mainly so Trump supporters could see her. But as you can see there, she made it about halfway through the rally, and she was escorted out. So just one of several disruptions at this rally tonight. Of course, not as many as last night in Burlington, Vermont. But Anderson, it was an unusual moment, somewhat of an uncomfortable moment for someone sitting around her. And then some other people in this crowd turned pretty ugly on her and started shouting some epithets and other things. So just one slice of an otherwise pretty boisterous Donald Trump rally here in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Anderson? All right. So this was an unusual situation.
Okay, so we're back. So yeah, like I said, an increasing sophistication and cleverness to the protests against Trump. So if we cast our minds back a little bit, you remember there was a Black Lives Matter guy who came to a Trump rally, started screaming and shouting, being an obnoxious douche. The crowd turned on him and kicked him out. He started fighting and resisting and ended up being a full-on brawl, and he got kicked out. No problem with what the Trump supporters did in that instance. That guy was rude and abusive. He came to a place, the fact that he got in is fine. Then he started being abusive. He was asked to leave and things got violent. Totally on him, his fault. Those Black Lives Matters women who jumped on stage at the Bernie Sanders event and they took over his microphone. They were just disgusting human beings. They should have been punted. I have no problem with this. They were the bad guys. Very, very easy to understand. We saw, I think it was a few days ago, there's a couple of guys just sitting in the back row in the bleachers at a Trump event holding up a sign saying, "God bless President Obama" or something. And the crowd I released a video about it just about 20 minutes ago, actually, on this channel, if you want to check it out. The crowd just turns on him, starts ripping the signs off him and things like that. So we're seeing an increased sophistication and cleverness to the protesters who are appearing at Donald Trump rallies. And pretty much every single place he goes, there's someone who wants to protest and make a statement, which I'm all for, right? The question is, do you do it appropriately or do you do it inappropriately? And it's getting better and better. They're starting to get smarter and smarter. They're taking the Gandhi approach, right? You just absolutely make sure that you're just a picture of virtue. You do absolutely nothing wrong. You just present yourself. You're not obnoxious. You don't do anything rude, and you let other idiots make fools of themselves as they chant and yell things at you and have you kicked out. So that's what's happening. And I think, well, there's a tremendous opportunity here for Trump to step up, and I'll get to that in a second. There's something else I want to talk about beforehand. Advice for the protesters. I like the way you're going, and it's very, very smart what you're doing. It's very important for the protesters when you insert yourself in a mob. This is just strategy. We've had the moral conversation. The fans were wrong. Done. Strategic commentary for the protesters, a little bit of advice. It's very, very important that you guys are absolutely squeaky clean. And the reason for that is, so MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, if you're familiar with that little piece of history, Rosa Parks was the woman who sat in the wrong section of a segregated bus, and she refused to move. And Martin Luther King and the whole movement got behind her and made her a poster child of the movement, and it was just a tremendous press victory for the movement. What some people don't know is that there was actually, Rosa Parks was not the first woman to do this. There was actually, I think, two, if my memory serves, actually did this before. But one of them was, I know one of them was a single mother. And at the time, that was a no-no. And so Martin Luther King Jr. and along with the whole organization said, we don't want this woman to be the poster child of our movement, because it's super important that when you're protesting like this, you want to be absolutely squeaky clean so that all the racists and all the idiots are there's just nowhere for them to hide except the fact that what they're doing is immoral. The concept of being squeaky clean is really, really important. And so Martin Luther King let that happen. And I think, if memory serves, about 9 months later, Rosa Parks came along, and they said, yes, this is a woman, a God-fearing woman who goes to church, etc. Let's go ahead and back her and make her the poster child. And that's the one we all read about in history. It was a brilliant strategic decision from Martin Luther King. So being squeaky clean is really, really important. So about this Muslim woman, the star on the shoulder, brilliant, great statement. Conjures up images of Hitler and making the Jews wear the stars. It was the same color. I think it was an 8-point star. It was the 6-pointed Star of David star. But it was just a brilliant gesture, great technique. When they were asked to leave by people who had the authority to ask them to leave, which was the security at the venue, they got up and they walked out peacefully. Brilliant maneuver. Very, very strategic. I'd say they just nailed everything. The shirt they was wearing, not a particularly powerful statement, I come in peace, but certainly nothing wrong with it. All good. I'd say they nailed absolutely everything in one small, tiny little component. They stood up and obstructed the view of the people behind them. Very, very small thing, but just, again, down that path of being 100% squeaky clean. So there's nowhere anybody can hide. If they could have just sat in their seat and maybe use some other mechanism to draw attention to themselves, possibly tape over their mouth, I think would have got some press coverage, or maybe if there was more of them, or maybe if they could sit in a different place where they weren't obstructing someone's view. Again, it's not to excuse the behavior of the fans, not by a long stretch, but trying to help the protesters strategically. Just being squeaky clean would be perfect, because if you come and you're an obstruction, you're yelling out, you're disrupting people around you, now there's an element of rudeness to what you're doing. And just advice to the protesters, don't do that in the future. So now I want to talk about what I think is the really, really interesting part. I think this is a real inflection point for the Trump campaign, because people saw that Trump, he's not going to get walked over by Black Lives Matter people like what happened to Bernie. He just absolute strength, and people really, really liked that and responded to that. He's shown great leadership, great courage. He's put on the table conversations that have been, people have been shut down. Social justice warriors have called you bigoted and racist and use all these stupid names that don't apply, to the point where they've lost all power. The liberal media has been shown to be fools over and over again as they misinterpret things. Trump has brilliantly said things really, really edgy, but not over the line, and then let the liberal media just go and commit suicide by misinterpreting and offering strawmans. A great example of that was if in the short term, until we figure out what's going on with all these suicide bombings and terrorist attacks, we should not allow new immigrants into the country. And the heading of that thing was like immigration policy or something. And so it was a specific statement about new immigrant and visa applications. It was an immigration policy statement. The liberal media goes and takes it and says, Trump wants to ban all Muslims. And they say, well, what about returning vets and all these kinds of things? And they just go and strawman it and make themselves look silly. And Trump has just played them to a T and just said something really, really edgy and not gone over the edge. And so he's done that very well. So now, but nonetheless, I'm sure Trump has a pretty decent following among blacks, among Hispanics, and to a lesser degree, Muslims. But I think here is an opportunity for Trump to absolutely shine and for his poll numbers to soar. If he comes out and says and dresses down his fans and says, hey guys, you're crossing the line now, that woman, that protester, the guy's holding up the God Bless Obama sign, if he comes out and defends an Obama supporter, if he comes out and defends a Muslim and criticizes his own followers, he is going to light the polls up. All of a sudden, there'll be this huge awakening among blacks, Hispanics, Muslims, and everybody that the liberal media tells you, if you're this, you have to hate Trump. That's the rules. And everyone is going to have this huge awakening and be like, Trump's, all the liberal media is lying to me about all that stuff. That's complete nonsense. He just wants to, what he's saying is perfectly fair, is perfectly reasonable. And he's willing to defend people that are in the right, even when, other categories, in other circumstances, that he might not defend them. And for those reasons. And it becomes really, really centered around the issues and not around the identities. And he will completely break the identity politics. It'll just break it wide open, and it'll be buried in the dustbin of history, hopefully, if he goes ahead and does this. So I'm very, very curious to watch this over the next few days. I really, really hope Trump comes out and just like a true leader, like a true champion, comes down and defends the little person, defends the minority. It's the right thing to do. Dress down the supporters who turn into a lynch mob because someone's wearing a shirt they don't like, because someone's wearing a Muslim sign they don't like. Dress them down. Those people have been are frustrated, and they've been silenced by the social justice warrior, liberal media bullshit, people calling them racist because they're not allowed to have an opinion on what their immigration policy should be. They're frustrated, they're easily triggered, and we're going to see a lot more of this. You're going to see, it's very, very easy to go and trigger these people because they finally have an outlet after decades of being silenced and being called stupid names. So it's really, really easy to trigger them. It's really, really easy to provoke them into a response. We're going to see it more and more. And I think if it would just be a masterful piece of strategy for Trump to just come along and dress those fans down, say, guys, cool it. We're having the conversation we need to have. We don't need to go more and start being rude to people, oppress people, kick them out. That's not what we're about. If he does that, he's just an absolute shoo-in for the general election, I would argue. So that was my thoughts on that. Let's keep an eye on this over the next few days. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Take care.